really hyped because Brian Kelly is doing work today putting together his staff at LSU. It got off to a nice start earlier this morning, right? It hires a strength and conditioning coordinator that many people, the more you read into it, said, oh, wait a minute, this is, Jacob Flint could work out pretty well. Hires a special teams coordinator. So you're like, oh, I guess that's it for Greg McMahon. But, man, Brian Polian got SEC experience. He's been a head coach, been back in Notre Dame for a while. It's pretty good. It seems like that could work out well. And then he reeled in the big fish, and everybody lost their mind with excitement. Then Brian Kelly goes down Interstate 10 to Lake Charles, pries Frank Wilson away from the head coaching job at McNeese while he still has 2 years on his contract to bring him back home to LSU to be the associate head coach, to lock down recruiting not only in the city of New Orleans, but he'll definitely do that, but not only in the city of New Orleans, but across the entire state of Louisiana. A guy who has been named National Recruiter of the Year twice. For anyone upset or concerned, how is Brian Kelly, who's from the Midwest and has never been in the SEC, going to recruit Louisiana? Frank Wilson. That's how.
Hell yeah. We're excited about LSU football again, man. Feels like the first time since early September. This is a good thing. As our guy T-Bob was saying in the promos recently, it looks like Santa Kelly finally put something under our tree. And all three of these are great hires, at least in my opinion, as we'll break down in a second. But you had to start with Frank Wilson coming back home. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a really good reaction on Twitter that I think speaks for a lot of LSU fans when Clyde this morning tweeted the following. That boy went and got Frank Laud. Laud indeed. Frank Wilson coming back is so big, not just because of his resume, well proven as a recruiting coordinator, recruiting expert, and as a head coach at McNeese State and at McNeese State recently, San Antonio State and McNeese State, excuse me. But just having the factor of him being a New Orleans native and understanding that area is so critical, especially after you dismiss Mickey Joseph, which a lot of people were upset about, not necessarily because of his on-field coaching, but because of his recruiting acumen, especially at his position. He's brought in guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in recently to attend LSU, but Frank Wilson's record is just as impressive, if not more impressive, what he did at LSU as recruiting coordinator from 2010 to 2016, brought some legendary players into here, man. And like I said, he knows the lay of the land. He knows the area of recruiting really, really well. All three of these hires are really good, but as Clyde Edwards-Helaire said, getting Frank Wilson back is the biggest hire, and LSU fans should be excited.
I mean, it's not just Clyde. I mean, you could see it from a number of different guys. Quan Alexander is tweeting about it. Nick Brissett. Marcus Spears dropped in a tweet about how big of a move this is for LSU. It is the entire LSU community who cares or has anything to do with football around here is just ecstatic about this move, and you should be. You mentioned some of the players he brought in. Leonard Fournette was the number one player in the country out of New Orleans. Got him here. Malachi Dupree, number one wide receiver in the country out of New Orleans. Got him here. How about Tyrann Mathieu? That guy was pretty darn good. Got him here and found him, as a matter of fact. Really, Tyrann, not the most highly recruited guy in the world, but that eye for talent that Frank Wilson has, this is a massive, massive move. When you lose somebody like Mickey Joseph, you had to go get somebody even better, and you did that in Frank Wilson. Mario, we talked about it on Monday. We spent a whole segment going through what might his staff start to look like, and I said what Brian Kelly is going to do is go out and get the best at each position for his staff. And he just proved it already by going get Frank Wilson.
For sure. And my last thought on Frank Wilson as we discuss these other hires and move on, shout out to Lars in the Bayou Ford YouTube chat who says, how does Frank Wilson fit in culturally, though?
Good one. Good one. Perfect. He fits in perfect, right? We all know that. And we have to wait and see how the rest of the staff plays out. I will say that right now, Frank Wilson, associate head coach, Brody Miller from The Athletic did note that the position room is pending. So it's just going to wait and see how it plays out. There have been reports confirmed and then unconfirmed about potentially Kevin Falk being retained as the running backs coach. Maybe those end up being true. Maybe Brian Kelly does go that direction. I think it's still a little too early to say there. But rest assured, Frank Wilson's going to get a position room assigned to him at some point. But he's here mainly as the associate head coach and to spearhead your effort recruiting, something that he knows all too well how to do, man. That is just a phenomenal get by Brian Kelly.
Yeah, great job by Scott Woodward, too. This is a guy that was a sitting head coach of a college football program. And, no disrespect to Frank Wilson, but sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? He went and tried at Texas San Antonio for 3 years. Had a little bit of success relative to where that program was before, but not as much. They're doing much better without him now. And also at McNeese State, did an okay job. But if LSU comes calling, Brian Kelly needs you for this specific role in recruiting for this specific area. You're going to answer that call, and we'll see what the future holds for Frank Wilson. But right now, this is a great move for him, too.
It's always tough to say no to home, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we could talk about Frank Wilson doing that, but look at a guy like Brad Davis. I mean, Brad Davis drops everything 3 months before the season up in Arkansas to come home. Blake Baker's another guy with heavy ties to the state of Louisiana, comes home. So it's always tough to, shut out that pull, that allure of home. And Frank Wilson, with 2 years left on his contract at McNeese, 2 years left, drops everything, comes join Brian Kelly back at LSU. That's a massive get. And it's not the only one. I mean, we that's the big fish. So you obviously lead with that one, but LSU's got a bowl game to prepare for. Brad Davis talked about getting back on the practice field this Saturday. Well, you're going to need somebody to lead workouts and lead drills. You got to have a strength and conditioning coordinator to do that. It seems like Brian Kelly has his. It's not officially announced by LSU, but multiple reports have been confirmed that Jacob Flint, who is the co-director of strength and conditioning, say that 5 times fast, up at Notre Dame with Matt Billis, Jacob Flint is going to come down and join Brian Kelly in Baton Rouge at LSU. Interesting career trajectory so far, really, for him. Played for Brian Kelly at Central Michigan, was a graduate assistant on that staff, was with him all throughout his time at Cincinnati and Notre Dame, has never spearheaded a strength and conditioning department. That's important to note there. I mean, there's the strength and conditioning coordinator, and then there's his staff. He's the coordinator. They did reported to hire a staff member, Xavier Gooden, to come along with him right now, but you look at Jacob Flint, never had that control yet, but Brian Kelly has spoken highly of him in the past as someone ready to take that next step. Now he gets that chance to take the next step. He's somebody who's been described very much as a player's coach, so maybe someone kind of similar to a Tommy Moffitt. I mean, you got to know Brian Kelly believes in him a lot for him to fill those shoes of an LSU institution like Tommy Moffitt.
For sure. And this is a guy that's a disciple of Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's going to trust him wholeheartedly. Brian Kelly's going to let him have full dominion because not only did he follow Brian Kelly to Notre Dame in 2010, but he worked for him at Cincinnati too from 2007, to 2009. Also played for Kelly back at Central Michigan when he was a head coach there. And he has some accolades too, Musso. He is a strength and conditioning coach certified by the NSCA, and he is a competitive power lifter as well. So this is a guy that practices what he preaches. But the last comment I'll make on Flint here is it's always tough to step in for a legend, right? It's really hard to replace somebody who was there for a long time and who did a lot of good work, like Miles Brennan replacing Joe Burrow, like us replacing Haney on this time slot in this great radio station. It's going to be tough to step in there for Tommy Moffitt, man. And no matter how good he's doing in his mind, a lot of these players are used to, working with a different voice, working with a different person. And his track record at LSU kind of speaks for itself, him being here for over 20 years. So that element of it is going to be tough. I don't know exactly what challenges that Flint will face in that regard, but it's always hard replacing a legend. Tommy Moffitt was one.
Absolutely. I mean, an LSU institution to span three coaching regimes at LSU, win 3 national championships, play for another one, the countless players he helped put into the NFL, what he did for those players off the field, just as much as what he did on the field. We talked about all the players raving about Frank Wilson coming back. You saw that when the news about Moffitt was announced as well. Just guys come out of the woodworks telling their story of their experience with Tommy Moffitt. So it'll absolutely be tough to replace a legend like that in an LSU institution. But Brian Kelly's entrusting that to be this guy's first job. It lets you know he believes in him an awful lot and believes he is ready to take that next step. Finally, Mario, one more coach is following Brian Kelly from South Bend. Again, not confirmed yet by LSU, but multiple reports citing this. Brian Polian will be the special teams coordinator at LSU, same role he held at Notre Dame. He's been a head coach in the past. He's got experience in the SEC, spent 1 year at Texas A&M as their special teams coordinator. Look, what stands out about him is kind of the same thing that stands out about Frank Wilson. This guy can recruit. Polian has helped land elite prospects, 5-star prospects in his few different times at Notre Dame. 5 stars Jimmy Clausen, Manti Te'o, Dane Christ, Michael Mayer, who's a great tight end, Kyle Rudolph. Ever heard of that guy? Well, Brian Polian helped get him to Notre Dame. So just more recruiting acumen being brought down, and somebody with familiar ties in the SEC seems like on surface a really good hire by Brian Kelly.
And has a really good track record as a special teams coach as well. They're kind of more middle of the pack this year as the Fighting Irish special teams, but in 2019 and in 2020, the punt coverage and the kickoff coverage were both ranked in the top 20 nationally. Also in 2019 and in 2020 combined, the Irish blocked 4 punts, returned 2 of them for touchdowns. Those numbers aren't too big, but 2 seasons, you get 2 punt returns for a touchdown, 1 in each season. That's one of the rarest plays in all of football. And the kick coverage has been there as well. You mentioned his recruiting acumen. The experience as a head coach always also helps as well, and also has some pretty good genes, right, as the son of a Hall of Fame NFL executive.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Polian put together some pretty darn good teams in the early 90s in Buffalo, and I mean, spent a lot of his career putting together teams for Peyton Manning as well. So, yeah, I mean, that guy, he knows, got an eye for talent, the Polian family, they do. So that's something solid. We'd be remiss if we left this segment talking about special teams without talking Greg McMahon, who is now retiring. That news officially confirmed by multiple sources, by multiple reporters now, citing multiple sources. Greg McMahon did a lot for LSU, but did a lot for football in Louisiana. He's going to retire with a Super Bowl ring from the New Orleans Saints and a national championship ring at LSU. Instrumental in getting Cole Tracy here, instrumental in getting Cade York here. So, man, a pretty golden era of LSU special teams right there, just talking about Tracy and York in general, and Greg McMahon was behind a lot of that, and just some other great recruiting wins as well in his time at LSU. So definitely a legend in the coaching in Louisiana with a Super Bowl ring and a national championship.
Yeah, and specifically at LSU, because it's more fresh in my mind, honestly. He did a great job coming in and replacing Bradley Del Pivoto. If you look at LSU's special teams in 2017, his first season, and then compare it to 2018 and 2019 when they won the New Year's Six Bowl and won the national championship, the special teams got so much better, not just in the, kick coverage game, but going out and getting Cole Tracy, how much better the kicking has been in general. You bring in Cade York after that, who's one of the best kickers in the country. Definitely want to thank Greg McMahon for all his service for football in Louisiana.
So a big day for Brian Kelly, hiring staff, special teams coordinator Brian Polian, strength and conditioning coordinator Jacob Flint, and the big fish, associate head coach, position room to be named later, but associate head coach Frank Wilson, of course, now former McNeese head coach Frank Wilson, in the boat to recruit New Orleans to help eventually return LSU to glory is the goal there of this staff. And look, I'll tell you this right now, those hires are huge. Now the focus shifts a little bit more, obviously, to the rest of the staff, but I think even having those guys in the boat, coordinator is going to be even more important, and use these as a guide. He went out and got Frank Wilson. He goes out and gets Polian. Say it again. Brian Kelly is going to go get the best coach for each position on this staff in the country. Some of them may already be here. Some of them may not, and he's going to go find them. Frank Wilson is exhibit A of that today.
He's done that so far, in my humble opinion, and I'll say it one more time because it's that important. Having a New Orleans native, having somebody so familiar with the 504 is huge. So to have Frank Wilson back at LSU after you lose Mickey Joseph is critical for this program.